I guess, Spencer, we didn't talk about this, but whenever you want me to move to the next slide, just say next and
I'll
I'll,
say, yeah, I'll say next.
okay, good. Great. Okay, well, why don't we get going? We'll probably still have people trickling in as the meeting gets going. That always happens. But hi everyone, I'm Mike, co-hosting today with Spencer. Spencer is really going to be the brains of the operation tonight, as you will hear. I'm mostly just his sous chef. But we're gonna just kind of jump right in. So I guess I should introduce Leland as well. So Leland is the platform that is hosting tonight. It's a marketplace for career and school admissions coaching, your one-stop shop to get all the help you need to achieve your career and school dreams. And now I'll pass it to Spencer to intro himself, and then I'll do a quick intro.
Thanks, Mike. Hi, everybody. My name is Spencer Belsky. I'm really excited to meet you all tonight and to share what I've learned, having gone through several different product management recruitment cycles. Last May, I just completed my master's in computer science from Northeastern University. And the year before that, I completed my bachelor's in information technology. So I was in a 5-year program at Northeastern that combined my master's and my bachelor's. 2 years ago, I was a software engineer at Anadot. And last year, I was a product management co op at Bevy. And right now, I'm an incoming rotational product manager at Meta. And I'm really excited to share with you guys how I got to where I am today. And I'd also like to reintroduce myself one more time because I think everybody sees on LinkedIn and when you're talking to your friends, like the best parts of the story, where we're like, oh, yeah, like these are all my logos and this is everything that's going great. But in reality, it's not that easy. So, my sophomore year, my bachelor's degree, I was still competing in skiing at the time. And I knew I should probably apply to internships because I was getting ready to stop competing. And I had so much imposter syndrome that I maybe applied to 5 or 6 internships. And when I didn't hear back from any of them, I was like, all right, I should probably just take summer classes. And I had this idea that I needed something on my resume where I needed to take a class or have some experience or be someone who I wasn't at the time in order to be successful and to get that dream internship. So I took summer classes that year, and then junior year rolled around. I still had that imposter syndrome, but I was like, all right, I really probably should try this time. So I fired off 100 internships, heard back from none of them. And I did end up getting into a fellowship program through a club I was involved in during my undergraduate. And the best thing about this fellowship was that you were guaranteed an internship. So I was able to avoid all of my problems and challenges with recruitment and just get this guaranteed internship by getting into a fellowship. So that was great. I did get something on my resume. But then come senior year, I was still faced with all the challenges and all the problems that I still had to face. And I really tried that time. I started doing all the interview prep, started learning how to make a resume, and I fired off probably 150 internship and co-op applications. And I got some interviews, made some final rounds, but not an offer. And I pretty much gave up. I was talking with my parents. I was like, maybe we should shift gears here. I don't know. And then finally, I got an interview from Bevy, and I was like, all right, this is my last one. And I got the offer. While I was at Bevy, I realized that I still couldn't really get around recruitment. So I decided to start working really hard. I totally changed my approach. And this is what the event's going to be focused on tonight is that new approach. And I ended up getting offers from Meta, from Microsoft, and JP Morgan. I'm good now, Mike.
Great. Hey everyone, I'm less impressive than Spencer, but want to talk through my story a little bit as well. So honestly, surprisingly similar. My sophomore year, I was like, okay, this product management thing sounds really cool. I'm gonna go for it. I applied to so many places. I think I had a spreadsheet where I tracked them all, and it was around 300. And I got so many no's. I ended up getting 2 interviews and no offers. I vividly remember there was this company called Badger Maps, and they decided to interview me, and I was like, well, I'm not that excited about them, but maybe I'll accept the interview just as some practice. And then they rejected me after the first round, and it's like this heartbreaking, like, oh, like I didn't want to work for you, but it hurts when you don't want to work for, or you don't want me to work for you. Um, Eventually, I convinced this startup to hire me. I saw they just raised a bunch of money. I met with like everyone on the product team and was just like, please, 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 please let me work for you. and they hired me. After that, everything changed. Like once I got like my foot in the door for that first PM internship, I was able to get another one. Then my junior year, APM recruiting came around. This time I applied to about 40 places, got 8 interviews and then 2 offers. And then finally for full time, I re-recruited again. This time I recruited with or interviewed with most of the major APM programs and then decided to turn them down and work for this cool startup called Leland. And we can talk later about some of my motives for that. But anyway, all this to say, this is really hard.
Yeah, no, Mike, you also have an amazing story, by the way. You're great, but product management recruitment is really hard. And it's among the most competitive roles to apply for as an entry level person in any industry. I would say it's as competitive as investment banking, more competitive than consulting. And you guys should give yourselves some credit for really trying to go after it. And you have to try if you want it this badly. And if you're here, you know that it is really hard. You've probably faced that really hard truth, why either by being ghosted or rejected by every company you've applied to, bombing an interview, or just feeling like, what is it that makes some people get offers and some people not get offers? And the truth is that you do have to do the grind. You do have to do all the recruiting, all the sending your resume out to hundreds of companies, all the prep, and then you have to get lucky. And we can teach you how to be as lucky as possible and apply to as many companies as possible. But it's all part of it, and you're in the right place. You're good, Mike.
Yeah. So a few things, even though it's hard, don't give up hope. It's definitely still worth doing, especially if you feel like product management is the right role for you. Um, Spencer, I don't know if there's anything you want to talk about this page specifically. If not, I've got a few thoughts.
Yeah, I think one thing I wanted to say is in the process of learning how to recruit for product management, you will learn how to recruit for every subsequent role you would ever want. You can recruit for consulting if you can recruit for product. You can recruit for banking if you can recruit for product. The skills you learn in this process actually set you up to have an amazingly successful career. So, regardless of if you actually get that product role or not, what you will learn in the process will be invaluable to you for the rest of your life.
Yep. I do think these companies love flexing their numbers. I remember when I got an offer from Atlassian, the first thing they said was, we had 5,500 applicants applying for 3 spots. And then Salesforce was the same story. They said, we've had about 12,000 people apply, or 12 to 15, and there's 12 spots. They've since upped it to about 18, but roughly 1 in 1,000, which sounds just so nerve-wracking. But the first thing you learn as you get deep into this is those numbers are like super inflated, where they keep applications open for far too long, and they make it really easy to apply. And there's a bunch of things that you can do to immediately get yourself into the top quartile or even top decile of all people who have applied. So don't be intimidated by those intimidating numbers. And we're going to talk through some of the things like very tactically make it so much easier.
So there's two main battles that you have to fight and win in order to have successful product management recruitment. You have to get the interview, which is probably the harder battle out of the two because there's so much that's outside of your control when you're getting the interview. And then you have to nail the interview. And this is what we're going to be talking about tonight. It's like, how do we get the interview and how do we make sure we're as ready as possible to nail it?
Yep. I will say we're going to do a Q&A section at the end, but if there are questions pertinent to the slide, please drop them in the chat or you can raise your hand.
Okay, so how do we win the battles? This is a metaphor that I've been cooking up ever since I decided that I wanted to do this event. What we need to do is we need to build a house. And you might be thinking, Spencer, you sound silly. Why do we have to build a house? What does building a house have to do with product management recruitment or recruitment in general? Mike, next slide, please. And the idea of the house is that there's several different components in this actual house. And the goal with building the house and with recruitment in general is we have to convince somebody, i.e. the recruiter or the hiring manager, who knows nothing about you, nothing about your personal story, or how badly you want the job, or whatever it is that led you to get into that position, that not only are you worthy of an interview, you're also worthy of an offer. So in a very short amount of time, you have a few moments of the recruiters looking at your resume, or you have just that interview. You have to convince to somebody that you're a worthy candidate or you're the best candidate that you can be, and you deserve a shot to be a product manager at that company. So what is in the house? We want to think about the house as having 4 key components, and we'll do a deep dive into each of these components. But these 4 steps, these 4 keys, have a disproportionate impact on what you can actually make of your product management recruitment. It involves your resume, it involves networking, it involves finding the jobs you want to apply to and applying to them as early as possible, and having a sexy LinkedIn. Next slide, please. So let's talk a little bit about the resume first. There's an overwhelming amount of advice on what should be on your resume. You guys have probably heard it all. You've probably heard that it can be as many pages as you want. It can be 2 columns. It has to have a fancy font. It needs to stand out. I think all that advice doesn't really matter. And it doesn't matter because it just impacts the way you think, oh, like I'm going to try one resume like this and one resume like that. And I'm going to cook up a bunch of different resumes and see what hits. I think for your sanity's sake and to save a lot of time and a lot of energy, you keep the resume as simple as possible. This is what I did. I decided all of my resumes were going to be 1 page. All of them are going to be 1 column. All of them are not going to have a professional summary. And yeah, we're not going to do cover letters either. Some roles do require you to apply with a cover letter. If I saw that, I almost always would not apply. I will add the caveat with that is, yeah, Mo, I agree with you. No one probably reads cover letters either. I will add the one caveat is that some of these really high level APM, RPM programs have short answer sections that they want you to fill out as a part of your application. Meta was one of those that did last year. My advice for you there is to actually answer the questions, make it as unique as possible, use whatever ChatGPT you want to make it quickly, but don't waste so much time here. And we'll talk more about why wasting time is important. But if the difference between you writing some crazy response means you're applying within 1 hour of it opening or 1 day of it opening, make it as short as possible, answer the question, do your best, and just hit submit. I guarantee you it will not have a big impact. We're good, Mike. So let's talk a little bit more about the specific lines that we should put on our resume and how we actually craft our resume for each job we should send out there. And I'll also add one more thing I forgot to add before. I did make a unique resume for each job I applied to, but they did not change that much. What I did is I highlighted the specific experiences that were most relevant to the job. And what we're seeing here, like this is a job description from a Klaviyo APM role that I just saw opened up on LinkedIn. And what you would want to do is you want to skim that job description and try and imagine you're a recruiter checking boxes on your resume. So I'm looking at this and I'm seeing, okay, they were looking for some sort of PM or PM adjacent experience. They're looking for project ownership. They're looking for work with data. We want to keep all these things in mind when we're deciding what lines we want to put on our resume and what do we want to most highlight when we're sending our resume away. We want to check their boxes. Mike. Okay, so this slide actually, I don't know how this slide ended up here. It was meant to be right after I introduced the house, so I apologize for that. But what I wanted to address actually, and why the house analogy or metaphor is really important, is because if you don't have all these components as part of your application, then you're probably not going to get an interview. Can you imagine if you have a great resume, you have a great LinkedIn, and you have a great network, but you're applying 2 or 4 days after the role opened, you're probably not going to get that interview. If you have a great LinkedIn and you have a great resume, but you don't have a network where so many other excellent candidates have that referral, then they're probably going to get the interviews and you're not. It's not a guarantee, but if we have a great house, if we have a great application that we've constructed, and we know that as an applicant, I'm doing every single thing I can do as part of the initial glance that recruiter is looking at my application. If I'm early, if I have that killer resume, I can maximize my chances of getting an interview. It's still not a guarantee, but if I can maximize my chances and do that as many times as possible, I will then get interviews. And then from there, we can talk about how we nail those interviews. We're going to go back into the resumes now. Sorry again for this slide being out of place. It must have moved in the last minute edit.
Yeah, one thing I'll add here, there's a question about if we can explain more about why applying early is important. So imagine you are a recruiter over APM recruiting and you're at Salesforce. There's going to be, 12 APM spots, and you know that 10,000 people are going to apply. So basically what you do is say, great, we're filling 12 spots. I'm roughly going to create 100 interview spots. Then you open the application, people start applying, and you just go through the resumes and you go, great, here's filling spot 1, 2, 3. You go until all 100 are full. And the second those are full, you stop looking at resumes because you've done your job. You have filled all 100 spots. You let it get narrowed down to like the final 12. You give them offers. Great, you're done. And so what ends up happening is these people create these custom resumes and these cover letters, and they put in all this work, but they apply after those 100 interview spots are filled, and then they don't get the interview, and they're just like so shocked. And the reality is they're just not spots for them. And it's nothing to do with their candidacy. It's like there was other people before them who checked all of the boxes. Um, so that's what we talk about when we say applying early. It's like make sure that you've checked the boxes and you are applying early.
So now we'll talk a little bit more about networking and the importance of networking. So I like to say networking is like growing a garden, and you're going to reap what you sow. And what you want to do with your network is you really want to plant a lot of seeds, as many seeds as possible, and you want to plant them continuously as you're going throughout your career. And that's because your network can help you land referrals and introductions at these top companies, and they'll help you increase the chances of you getting an interview. As your career progresses, your network's career will also progress. So all of your classmates right now, think about it. Some of them are going into banking, some of them are going into consulting, some of them will end up in tech companies in APM or RPM roles, but they will also grow at those companies as well. So in 3 years, some of these people may actually have some serious decision-making power in hiring committees. And if you stay in decent contact with that person, they can help you get that dream job that you didn't know you wanted today. And you also can't even anticipate where you might want to be 5 years from now. So it helps to hedge your bets, make a lot of connections, make new friends, and just go meet a lot of people that can then come help you in the future, but also in the present. So, what are some ways we can effectively network with people? So, the first thing we would like to do is identify your target. And in this case, we're talking about product management, specifically APM and RPM programs. So, what I did last year to help grow my network is I looked at it through the lens of Northeastern University, my school, the clubs and organizations I was in. So, I was in a fraternity, I was in a few professional clubs. And what I would do is I would go on LinkedIn and I would search Northeastern University Product Manager, and I would see who popped up. And whoever had a second or third level connection, I would go and try and reach out to them. For those second level connections where you can see a mutual person that you actually know pretty well, it always helps to ask for an introduction, because introductions almost guarantee that you're actually going to be able to meet that person. Cold emailing and cold DMing is much more difficult, but with enough volume, you will get some success. But the introductions are always more efficient. After you have that meeting with that person, you want to be prepared. And by being prepared, you actually impress the person. You're not there to waste their time. You want to get to know them. You want to get to know their role. And by being prepared, I'll do anything from Google searching their name, stalking their LinkedIn, looking to see if they wrote an article. Did somebody write an article about them? Were they a part of a startup that you were really interested in? And really just come up with a bunch of questions that you're genuinely interested in learning about this person. And because you probably don't have anything to offer this person right now, instead of giving them something in exchange for the time, you're going to give them friendship, and you're going to flatter them and say, "Hey, I'm interested in getting to know you." And most of these people, if you get them talking about the thing they want to talk about, they'll actually be really happy you asked. Lastly, I kind of touched on this before, is the importance of volume. If you reach out to 10 people, and one person gets back to you and you're feeling sorry for yourself, then the problem is not that you weren't networking wrong. The problem is that you didn't network enough. So last summer, what I would do is I would say, okay, I'm going to start my day by reaching out to 5 new people on LinkedIn every single day. And that's 35 people in a week, over 100 a month. And if you do this month over month, you would be surprised at how full your calendar gets with quick coffee chats with people. And then you want to maintain those relationships with people. Reach out to them every 3 months. Say, "Hey, how you doing? How's this thing we talked about on our last meeting? How are your kids doing if they have children?" And over time, this network will actually grow into a genuine friendship. And then this person would be dying to help you if you asked. I'm good, Mike. Unless you want to add anything.
Yeah, I just wanted to add two things here. The first one is if you wait till a company opens their application, you are too late. Spencer, I don't know if you've experienced this already, but like the second Meta is going to open their application, you're going to get 50 LinkedIn requests every day for the next like 2 months. And for all the good intentions you have, and for all the work you'll do to give back to those people and talk to them, it is impossible to talk to like 500 people. Um, and so, but like right now, you're maybe not getting that many. And so if you start early and you meet with people like May, June, maybe even July, you're usually fine. But if you wait till August, September, it gets super hard. The second thing is if you're already connected with someone, it is so much easier to send a message than it is to like send a request with a message. And one of the best favors I ever did my future self was that sophomore year when I was applying to like 300 companies, I connected with so many random people on LinkedIn. And it totally ruined my feed, but that was okay because the next summer when I needed to get referrals, I already was connected with all of these people and I could hit them up again and like actually connect with them. And that was like a game-changing thing for me.
100% agree. I think one of the running themes throughout this event is there's a reason why we're doing this in 90 days out, because this is an excellent time to start all of this prep if you haven't started already. This is around where I started taking things really seriously when I was doing my APM prep last year. So you're in a great spot, and think about how far ahead you are of everybody who hasn't even thought about starting yet. If you're working internships right now, I recommend go home after your internship and start doing these interviews, start networking with people and start putting the materials together to get prepping. But yeah, Mike, thank you for sharing that. So now we're going to talk a bit about applying early. And I saw a bunch of questions in the chat about applying early and its importance. Mike already talked about it before, the way the recruiter would fill the slots for these interviews. So, right, they only have so many interviews to get out. And think about it from a business perspective as well. Engineering teams and product team time is actually really valuable. Tech companies and any company typically pays these people a lot of money. So we want to minimize their time recruiting, which is why we have a recruitment staff in the first place. But we want to make sure we're applying as early as possible. I say no later than 48 hours if you can help it. If you can find out when the job is opening, and we're talking about that on the next slide, if you can find out when the job is opening and apply minutes after, that is your best shot. And it's still not a guarantee, but you know you did every single thing right up to that point, and that's what matters. Mike, I'm ready. So this is the big question, right? Like, how do we find out when these jobs are posted? We want to network at the companies that we already know we're probably going to apply to. So these would be the top APM, RPM programs. These are your Googles, your Metas, your Pinterests, your Spotifys, your LinkedIns. You want to already have networks at those companies growing. You don't want to rely on just one person as well. I recommend to start, find at least 3 people that at each company that you know, okay, at least I can have a first level connection with that person. And from there, grow the relationship from there, because you can ask that person for an introduction from another to another PM at those companies. And while you're growing these relationships, you can say, hey, do you know if your team is planning on having an intern this year? Wink, wink. Do you know when these APM, RPM roles might open? Please tell me. Can you please take my resume that I just applied to the APM program with and put it in front of the recruiter? Or can you put it in front of the hiring manager? Can you put in a good word? And all these things have such an impact on the fact on whether or not you get an interview or get the offer. This is a huge component of saying, hey, now I'm opening doors that were previously shut. Or it's so different than just sending out a cold application 3 days after the posting opened. So let's talk a little bit about the LinkedIn brand. And some of you guys may have seen my LinkedIn before this, or you looked at my LinkedIn before clicking on this event, or Mike's LinkedIn. But the key idea with the LinkedIn is that it's going to speak for you when you're not in the room. How much can you learn about my professional background and life I've had based on my LinkedIn? And I will say, you only see what I want you to see. You won't see that second slide where I kind of told you my sob story and all the behind the scenes. We like to leave that off the LinkedIn, but if a recruiter wants to learn more about me after seeing my resume, and I recommend having your LinkedIn hyperlink in your resume, they can go look. I can tell you when I got my interviews for Bevy and for Meta, I was able to see on LinkedIn that the recruiter at Bevy saw my LinkedIn. You have that setting enabled where you can see who saw your profile. And I also saw it at Meta. And I knew that was a very good sign because my LinkedIn was well prepared for people to learn more about me, learn more about my story. It goes deeper than just what my resume is. What was I doing before? What are my side projects? Where can I inject some personality into my LinkedIn so I don't look like just another humble bragger? Next slide, Mike. So what should be on LinkedIn? That's exactly what I was just saying. We want to show off our education. Where did I go to school? What are projects that I'm proud of? Maybe you won an award. Even if you didn't win an award, you can still share the project. What are your extracurriculars, just sports? What clubs are you in? The volunteering. What are your interests outside of the role? Show that you're more than just that student and aspiring product manager. Show the side of yourself. Show that, yeah, like I'm going to be great to work with in addition to doing an excellent job. So, what's the outcome if we build our house, if we put all these pieces together? We know that every time we apply to a job or an internship, we now have the best resume we can have for the role. We have a network that we've made that's helping us from the inside. We have a LinkedIn that's going to tell my story to the recruiter and to the hiring manager when I'm not there. And we've clicked submit before 99% of other candidates. So instead of having a burning house like we saw before, we have, Mike, next slide, please. We have this beautiful little home that we've made. It has all of these four key components that have such a disproportionate impact on getting the interview. Now, what's the next step? Okay, so we've built this house. Maybe it's a little dingy. We got to make the house beautiful. No, that was good. That was good. We got to make the house beautiful. And we do this by nailing the interview. And how do we nail the interview? Okay, so now, okay, no, sorry, Mike. Mike is actually going to cut in here and talk a little bit more about not only how we nail the interview, but nail the whole PM recruitment prep process.
Yeah, so as you know, like I've been trying to respond to some of these questions. There's so much content in terms of product management and recruiting. We obviously can't cover everything in one night. Frankly, we probably couldn't cover it in like multiple nights. Um, so we just recently launched a PM recruiting bootcamp. Basically, what we did is we realized that there's kind of this gap where there's a bunch of content you can use, and the content can help you learn generally about PM recruiting. Maybe you know what a good resume looks like or what some of the common cases are. But it's not very personalized and it doesn't answer the questions that are like, how should I talk about my experience? How am I doing at these interviews? Are my questions sufficient? And that's where one-on-one coaching comes in. But one-on-one coaching can also be really expensive because there's a lot of content to cover. And so to kind of find a happy medium between the two, we created this PM bootcamp where we went among our like 1,000 coaches on Leland. We handpicked several who are really good at certain topics, and we had them do a deep dive into those topics. So some of the topics that will be covered include getting the interview, take-home assignments, product design interviews, technical interviews, behavioral interviews, a bunch of different things, basically everything you need to get the offer. It's roughly 8 sessions. Each session is 90 minutes. You'll also be assigned different peer groups to practice interviews, custom drills and assignments. You'll do a practice interview with a coach. So really everything you need to know the fundamentals of recruiting. And yeah, if you were to do this with one-on-one coaching, it would be extremely expensive. If you were to do this with content, you wouldn't get the personalized aspect to it. And so we're doing this giveaway where if you fill out this form right here, we'll text you the link to the bootcamp page, and then we're raffling off one free bootcamp entry tonight. And at the end of this session, I'll announce who won the entry. So you can see it here. I believe we're also dropping it in the chat. Yeah, it's a random raffle. I guess I'll pause here before we move on for any questions. Oh yeah, is the bootcamp recommended for recent grads already out of university? Not sure if recent grads are eligible for most APM programs. So it really depends on the APM program. So Google, for example, usually doesn't accept people who are already in their career. Atlassian, where I had worked, they do. Shopify usually does. And so if you're already out of school, you've excluded yourself from some APM programs, but I definitely would not rule out APM in general. And so definitely would still recommend doing it. Yeah, you can do mocks with the coaches who teach the curriculum. In fact, we recommend that. Like, hear from the coach and then go work with the coach if you have questions.
I see a question that says, and Mike, I don't know if you answered this, is this boot camp program more for nailing the interview than getting the interview? I would consider it a full stack process. So if we're going along with this analogy of building the house, going through the boot camp will teach you how to build your own house and make it beautiful.
Yep. Amazing. Okay, coaches are still being determined. We're trying to figure out if we want to use. There's several coaches we have confirmed, and we're trying to decide, should we have those same coaches do multiple sessions, or are we going to have one coach for each individual session? And so once that's confirmed, we'll confirm the list of coaches on the landing page.
I'll be one of the coaches for at least one of the sessions. We're not sure specifically which one yet, but it's probably going to be getting the interview because if you can't tell, I'm very passionate about it. And I've been through the ringer with that process as well. So I have a lot to teach, and I can go way deeper than what we're just learning tonight.
Yep. Okay, let's jump into this. Before I do, though, it seems like there's a ton of questions on what are APM programs. So I'm just going to quickly answer some of those questions. So here is the background. Product management didn't really exist as an industry until fairly recently. And then companies realized that they had this problem of, we need PMs, but there's not really an established path to becoming a PM. So we are going to create a training ground where we can train and create product managers. So around like the year 2000, maybe it was like 2002 or something, Google created the first APM program where they said, we're going to take a handful of people, we're going to give them a ton of hands-on mentorship and coaching and teach them to be a great product leader. Since then, many of those PMs went on to build great companies and be great product leaders. They've switched companies and then have replicated their experience. So, for example, the APM program at Salesforce was built by one of the first Google APMs. And so APM is like these structured product learning experiences. Now, some companies say, we don't need you to do the whole APM thing. We'll hire you directly as a product manager, an entry-level product manager. Usually those are smaller, more like mid-market companies. And the bigger companies like the Googles, the Metas, the I don't know, DoorDashes will have these structured mentor programs. Anything you'd add there, Spencer?
No, I think that was really great. And just like there's a lot of different ways to break into product. Like just because you don't get into an APM or RPM program, that does not mean you're not going to be a product manager. And I saw some questions about how do you break into product management from being a software engineer or being a product designer. There's a lot of ways to switch into it by being in a product adjacent role. And I would say like at least describing the difference between like, oh, this is an entry level career path to being a product manager, but the best way to be a product manager is to make your own product. That is a product manager. And they say like CEOs really are little product managers or big product managers. It depends on the size of your product, of course, and how big your company is. But if you're making a product, that's really not too different from the types of roles and responsibility you would have being a PM in one of these programs. Because if you are, let's say you're the CEO of a startup, or if you're trying to create a little side hustle, you do have to figure out what's my product market fit? Who are my customers? What do my customers want? And these are all questions that APMs and RPMs have to ask and answer. The only difference is what environment are you doing it in? And yes, the APM, RPM programs are more glamorous. They have this structured career path to work your way up at a company, but that does not mean that you cannot go be a product manager on your own. And many companies, like I know the LinkedIn APM program is huge on this. They want to see that you've tried to create your own product on your own because they know that's what it takes to become a great product manager.
Yep. Okay, well, we're gonna just kind of cruise through this, and then there's a ton of questions, and we can jump into some more Q&A. Mostly, the goal of this part right here is I want to get on your radar what happens in these PM interviews because they are really hard. And I want you to feel how hard they are and start practicing as soon as possible because you either go through the pain and the fear right now, or you do it during the interview day. And so it's like so much better to get it out of the way. So we're just going to kind of brush through this. We won't have time to go deep into like what's the perfect way to solve each type of product case, but I want you to know what are the different types of product cases. So, great. First thing, our behavioral interviews. This is not unique to product, but they can still be really hard. Sometimes they're as basic or ubiquitous as tell me about a time you had a conflict with a coworker. Sometimes they'll be as difficult as if you were the CEO. This was literally a question I got. If you were the CEO of Atlassian, what would keep you up at night? Or what would the company strategy be? Like big, hard questions, and they want you to be able to answer these in depth. Sometimes they'll even take a common question and they'll spin it to make it more difficult. Like, tell me about a time you had a conflict with a coworker, but the coworker knew more about the subject than you did. To really kind of put you on edge. Um, Generally, my advice here, and Spencer has listed out a few things, but my two pieces of advice, then I'll pass it on to you, Spencer, are one, know the company and know the industry. We didn't have time to go into my story as much, but I worked at this startup called Guide CX that did project management software. And then when I was interviewing with Atlassian, which builds a lot of project management software, I was able to speak very knowledgeably about their industry because I just spent 3 months working in it. And I think the reason I got my offer was because of my ability to answer those hard questions. Like, if you were the CEO of Atlassian, what would you do or what would you care about? So in depth.
Yeah, Mike, and I'll take over from here. Just talking more about the behavioral interviews. And the key with the behavioral interview and with all these interviews is going to be practice. We like to use, and I really feel very strongly about this, the STAR framework when we're answering these behavioral interview questions. You want to have 5 to 6 STAR stories that you can spin pretty much any way so you can answer any question on the spot. I could tell you a story about my ski career that sounds amazing because I was ranked 7th in the United States and had all these amazing outcomes. I could also tell you as a failure because I didn't make my end goal of making the US ski team or the Olympics. And from both of those, I can tell you what I learned. But it's still the same story, and I can rely on it in so many different ways. So we want to have those stories that are adjustable on the spot. How can we make the stories relevant to the jobs that you're applying to? So if you get the interview, if you get that far, I recommend going back to the job description and reading it over again and seeing, okay, what specifically are they looking for in their candidate? And we want to look at those same attributes that we use to write on our resume, because chances are we'll have the resume in front of us if we're doing the interview. Or you can even say, you don't have to tell them, but have the resume up on your screen while you're doing the interview. I do that all the time just to make sure that I'm on the same page with my recruiter, and they're almost always not going to know. And also, like Mike said, be familiar with the company, the industry, know the company mission statement. And if you're ever in doubt, not only in a behavioral interview, but in the case interviews, always reflect back on the mission. And you can use that to kind of buy yourself some time while you're thinking about it. I used this when I was recruiting for Meta. I was like, okay, so I know Meta's mission is to empower people to build communities, and then use that, like just those few seconds, and even just dropping it in there, you're showing them, okay, this is a great candidate because at least he's done his homework. That speaks volumes about who you are as a person, because that's the homework you're going to do when you go on the job. I'm
Yep.
ready.
Yeah,
Next.
that's so good. I have horror stories of like getting asked questions like, what's your favorite company value? And just not knowing their company values and it being like this really awkward, I don't know. So make sure you
What's
do
your
your
favorite company value?
Okay, so this is a non-comprehensive list, but some of the really common interview question or product cases are a product sense, we'll talk about this, execution, metrics and data estimation. As Spencer already called out, this depends a lot on the company and their unique values and mission. And so they will adapt these. Often, a lot of these APM programs are like platform level tech companies. So like Meta, for example, they've got Instagram, they've got WhatsApp, they've got Facebook. And so they'll gear these cases towards one of their products. That's not always true, but generally a pattern that I've seen. So here are just a few questions. So, and these are all questions I have received. So in the product sense, design a feature to increase user retention for Duolingo. What's your favorite product and how do you improve it? I've been asked this, what's your favorite product question, maybe 85 times. Like it is probably like, if you don't have an answer for this, you should, because you will be asked that. Execution, how should Amazon enter the food delivery market? Uber driver cancellations increased by 30%. What do you do? Metrics and data. You're the PM over Snapchat stories. What's your North Star metric? Estimation, what's the market size for Slack? Again, we could spend hours talking through each type of these, and we will spend hours in the bootcamp. At bare minimum, I want you to be aware of here are the types of cases you'll receive. They are very difficult. There's frameworks to solve each of them. There's best practices and things they're looking to see. And you can get good at them. It just takes a lot of time and practice.
Yeah, and the biggest key with these interviews, and Mike said it before too, and I kind of want to just throw in a little story I had and what led me to actually go on this crazy recruitment bender and why I got to where I am, honestly, is because I had an interview for a Google APM internship. And I was like, all right, I got the interview. It was the only company I applied to. I knew it. They're going to love me. I'm going to be a great candidate. I did maybe 2 or 3 mocks before it. I was like, I'll figure it out in the interview. I'll be fine. And I totally bombed the interview. I was so unprepared. The question was, what is your favorite product and how would you improve it? The most layup question you could possibly get in product management case interviews, and I bombed it. I wasn't ready for it. And the answer to figuring out how to get better at these interviews is to practice. You have to practice and practice and practice. And if you think you're done practicing, practice more. Last summer, I would go home after my internship and I would have at least 1 mock interview scheduled every day. Some days I would do 2, and I would try to pretend I had a super day just to get my brain thinking like that. Like, okay, and I will have a super day if I get an interview. I got to be ready for it. And I just knew that level of prep was going to put me ahead of my competition, knowing that if I practiced super days, that once I got into a super day, I know what it's like to have my brain totally drained. It makes a night and day difference for your interviewer. You get to a point where your first 15 mock interviews, you think like you may not even get through it. I didn't get through my first 10 product management interviews. I recommend having training wheels, meaning have the framework on the screen in front of you. Don't think you can get through it at first. Have the framework on the screen in front of you. Know what you're supposed to be thinking out at the different stages of the interview and practice doing it like that. And then gradually remove the training wheels by getting rid of that framework, but continuing to practice. Mike said this too, like the fear and pain should not stop you from doing this prep right now, because the worst case scenario is you're doing everything else right and then you get that interview and you blow it because you're afraid of failure. And if you're afraid of failure, then I'm not sure what to say. Like I would so much rather fail a mock interview in practice 100 times to be more ready for the real interview than the opposite. And all this practice makes you confident. It makes you experienced. It makes you think, okay, and Mike, maybe you want to go to the next slide because I'm about to start talking about that. Right. When you excessively practice, your interview skills become second nature. So you can be answering the question and then in the back of your mind thinking, okay, how long am I taking to answer this? How long is the silence? Am I engaging with the interviewer enough? Am I asking the right questions? Do I need to check in with them? Am I sharing my screen? Are my notes organized? And you just get this confidence that you didn't know you were even capable of. You have no idea the difference it makes from doing 50 mock interviews, 100 mock interviews, you become such a better interviewer. And the best part is that when you get to that level, even your bad interviews are better than the rest of your competitions.
Yeah, so good. Thank you, Spencer.
Of course.
Okay, there have been a ton of questions about who to do mock interviews with.
Mm,
Uh, so there's two things that you're trying to do here with mock interviews. The first one, and if you've done mock interviews, you'll know what I mean. But the second they give you that question, like, how should Amazon enter the food delivery market? And you feel that pit in your stomach of, I have no clue how to answer this. Like, you are training yourself to have like a reflex reaction to like, okay, breathe. Now, like, I'm just going to start breaking this down. I've got my go-to frameworks. I know how to solve this. And so one, you're just teaching yourself how to have like that reflex to these really hard cases, all the things that Spencer talked about, drilling in good habits, removing buzzwords. The second thing that you're trying to do here is actually refine your answers and like get good. So getting like the really tactical feedback of, am I answering this right? Am I segmenting users the right way? Am I being creative enough? So the first part, just the practice, getting good, that can be done by yourself. That can be done with someone else. That can be done with someone who's less experienced than you, more experienced than you. It's really just like, it's for you. The other part, you want someone who knows what they're doing to give you good feedback. And that's where one-on-one is so important. And frankly, that's like the whole idea of Leland is you can only get so far alone. And there, every once in a while, you need the help of someone who knows what they're doing to steer you and guide you and give you that personalized feedback. And so work with a coach, talk to someone who knows what they're doing, who's gone through APM recruiting and give you good feedback. That will only be some small portion of all the mocks you do. Make sure you do a lot of practices on your own as well.
yeah. And I'll say one more thing to that, Mike, is like you should start doing prep on your own and just get to the point where you can get through interviews. And if you get to a point where, okay, I'm doing 20, I've done 30 mocks, and then you're doing a mock interview with somebody. Like I remember when I needed coaching, I was doing a mock interview with someone and I knew I nailed it. I knew because I'd done so many. And the other person was trying to tell me otherwise. And that's when I realized I know I have so much experience doing this. The other person doesn't know what they're talking about. I need to level up. I need to go, okay, so maybe I've gone 0 to 80 at that point, and coaching will take you from 80 to 90 and 90 to 100. And
Yep.
that's where you really get the most value out of working with a coach, such as myself. Amanda, thank you for plugging my coaching in the chat. But I want to help you get to a point where you can either go out and do the practice on your own and know, okay, these are the frameworks I need to practice. This is how I need to practice them. And then you get to a point where it's like, I know I've done my work. Let's go become the best interviewer I can be.
Yeah, exactly. I guess I don't know if we said this at the beginning. Both Spencer and I are successful Leland customers. Like we both recognize the importance of one-on-one coaching and used it. I've used Leland for multiple categories. I used it to apply to business school and PM coaching. Um, great. Okay. This one. Okay, I'll let you lead this, Spencer.
I got it. So now we can use our imagination and say we have a beautiful home now because inside the home were those four components that we talked about earlier, right? We have our resume, our network, our LinkedIn, and applying early. But then that gets us into the door. But we don't want to sell. Remember, we're selling ourselves in these interviews. We don't want to sell bad interviewing skills. We want to sell an excellent interviewing skill, an excellent person all around. So through getting the interview and nailing the interview, we now have somebody who's capable of saying, hey, I know I can get a few interviews if I do every single thing right. And I know that I've done the work in my free time to truly excel in these interviews to the point where if I get one opportunity, just one, I know I'm going to be able to put my best foot forward when I'm actually in this interview process. And you get to the point where it's just like, all right, it's rapid fire, it's automatic. They're going to ask me the question. I'll take that deep breath. I'm going to reflect instantly on all the other mock interviews I've done. Something else that I forgot to add, when you do such a high volume of mock interviews, the odds that you come across a question that you've actually answered before go up dramatically. When I was recruiting for Meta, this past season, I literally had done the question before, like the night before, I'd done one more mock interview. And in both super days, I ended up answering the same exact question. And it was just like, oh my gosh, like I can't believe they're asking me this question. I just thought about this. And it was the greatest feeling in the world because I know I did the work. And it's so rewarding when you're like, yeah, I worked hard, and you get to reap the fruits of your labor if you do that.
It's so funny you mentioned that. I actually had that same experience twice. One was first round of Salesforce. They did how do you improve Tableau? And just the day before I did the same one, but I'd given that mock in a practice,
Mm.
and I just like copy and pasted what my partner's answer was. And like the interviewer loved it. He's like, what a creative answer. That was so good. Anyway, yes. And then the same thing actually happened in final rounds as well with Spotify. So definitely recommend doing mocks.
Mm. Yeah, and what's the last part? So I was just saying before, and Mike, we can even just skip ahead to the next slide. And like this is a key thing that I really think of when I think about what worked for me last year and what didn't work for me all those years before. And that's this concept I like to call qualified application volume. So what makes you a qualified applicant? If you know every time you make your resume that you're looking at the job description, making sure the attributes that you're checking the boxes that the recruiters are looking for line by line, and you know that you have a network on the inside that's going to try and get your resume in front of the recruiter where you have at least a referral, because not every company does that too. We're saying it, you have to try it, but if you can't, try to get the referral. And some companies don't take either. Meta doesn't take referrals for their RPM program. It's a level playing field. But then you apply early, and you know you have a LinkedIn that tells your story. You know you're a qualified applicant then. And then if you do that enough times, apply to as many companies as you can, and you get an interview, you'll then say, okay, like I know I was as qualified as I could possibly be. I can't take anything that Mike's done and put it into my story. Like I can't take Mike's resume. He has a totally different life, totally different experiences. I can take inspiration from it, but no, I have to make my own story. But I'm going to shoot that story as many shots as I can. I'm going to shoot my shot wherever I can, and I'll get that interview. And then with enough interviews, if I know I'm doing my prep behind the scenes, if I'm doing these mock interviews, I'm going to get that offer eventually. And it's really hard. I'll go back and be like, oh my gosh, like I remember like before I got Bevy, I was done. I was like, I'm giving up on product management recruiting. It's not for me. Like it does, there's no way. There's some magic dust some people sprinkle. You just have to keep trying. So have as high qualified application volume as possible. And next slide, Mike. You got to make as many homes as possible. You only need one yes. And Mike, I'm sure, has a lot of stories relating to this. Is like as soon as you get that one yes, all of the doors open up because you can take that one offer and leverage it and go back to all the other companies that you were applying to or interviewing with and saying, hey, I have offers that I have one offer. And since that makes you a valuable candidate, if one company sees value in you, somebody's going to see value in like all the companies are going to see value in you. And then you can really pick and choose where you want to go from there. I think. Oh, Mike, do you want to add anything?
No, that was so good. That's everything for me.
Cool. So yeah, guys, like seriously, thank you so much for coming and listening. Definitely happy to stay online and answer your questions. I see so many questions, and if you asked one and you want to stay online, I'm happy to answer it. This I know this meeting was recorded. You'll probably get an email about it. I actually don't know. I think Amanda or Mike can chip in. Um, yeah, so the recording is going to be sent 2 days from now via email. If you want to work with me as a coach or as a client, please book a call with me. I'm offering a 10% discount on all my services. If you just want to chat because you enjoyed listening to hear me speak, God bless you. Just book a free 15-minute intro call, and I'm definitely happy to get to know you. Also, I'm going to shamelessly plug Mike and I's LinkedIn's as well. We probably should have put it somewhere in the deck, but yeah, like grow your network with us right now because either we can absolutely help each other in the future. Please connect with me. Tell me your thoughts. If you think, thank you, Shay. If you think the house analogy was fun, tell me. If you think it wasn't, tell me. I'll stop rambling now.
Yeah. Okay. Before people drop, just want to quickly say who the winner of the boot camp was.
Mm.
Uh, the winner is Jennifer Coomer. We'll be messaging you that you won the boot camp after this and giving you
Congratulations.
a link. Um, if you did not win the boot camp, I'm so sorry. But the boot camp is still available. And I don't know if we mentioned this as part of the slides. there's a discount tonight. I believe it's $100 off tonight, or maybe it's 150. So book now. And then much like season or like marathon pricing or season passes go, it gets more expensive as you get closer to the deadline. So book early, get those early bird discounts. Um, Great meeting all of you. Happy to stay on as well for a few minutes and answer final questions.
Yeah. I'll take Veronica's question. How do you deal with failed interviews? Can you apply again with the company again? Is it worth a shot? So something I didn't really touch on in this that I think is in this whole event is as a part, one of the key components of getting lucky is shooting your shot as many times as possible. And there's two ways you can look at it. You shoot your shot at every company, every single recruitment season, but if you're, and I was very fortunate with my master's program to be able to buy myself another year of recruitment, which is what I like to say is if you can give yourself another year of being a student and technically qualifying for these roles, go for it. Because my logic is the better your first job is going to be, the better your second job is going to be. When you get the name brand of these APM, RPM programs, it's absolutely worth delaying your graduation. The question becomes, what do you fill that time with? Maybe you can apply to an internship or a co-op that's off cycle, even on cycle. You will be able to kind of sneak in another internship that makes your resume even better the next time you apply. So absolutely apply to those companies again. How do you deal with it? It's never a good feeling failing an interview. I think you just have to look where it went wrong. It usually tends to be practice. And yeah, I think it's absolutely worth a shot every time.
Yep.
Mike, do you want to take a question now? I can keep going too.
Okay, yeah, there was a few I saw. How do you transition into a PM role? Do a company offers programs for such candidates? Yeah, so there's a lot that could be talked about here. It obviously depends a lot on the person and what their previous experience is. Two thoughts. So the first thought is pivoting within companies tends to be like the most successful I've seen with past clients that I've worked with. If that's not an option, or if you don't want to work at the company you're currently at, the second best option is, well, I guess there's a lot you could do here. So take your previous experience and frame it as product oriented as you possibly can. I had this client, she had applied to medical school. That was like her whole thing, and then decided she didn't want to be a doctor and wanted to break into product. And during school had been an ACT tutor. So it's like, okay, how are we going to frame this? And so we framed a lot of her ACT tutor curriculum development in a very product oriented way. Talked about a lot of the things like user pain points and product roadmap. And then she ended up getting an offer very quickly after working together. And so there's a lot you can do there. The other things that I've seen people do successfully are starting side projects where you're just like the PM of your startup and getting it going. And then you can put like founder/PM on your resume. Or I've actually seen people have blogs where they review products and talk about how they'd improve them. I've seen that work to some success as well.
I see a question from Min. Are portfolios important at all during this process? So by portfolio, I'm going to assume you mean something like either like a GitHub repo where we can see your technical work, or I know some product management YouTubers like Dr. Nancy Lee talks about making a product portfolio. I think this is good. I think it's helpful, and it's kind of similar to what Mike was just talking about before, where you're saying, yeah, like I'm a startup or I'm a founder PM or CEO PM of this product that I made or this company that I made. And I think you can tweak your portfolio in a way or present it in a way where you were the product manager of that portfolio. And these are the products that you managed. And then you have to think about how would you tailor the resume each time you write it to saying, hey, okay, like each of these experiences has product adjacent or job description adjacent attributes that check the boxes that they're looking for. So I think portfolios are one way to look at solving that problem. It's just about how you present that information and what you do with it on your resume and on your LinkedIn. Mike, do you have anything to add there?
No, you nailed it. The only thing I'll add here is people, I mean, this is human nature, but people do what's most comfortable for them, especially if they feel like it's helping, even if it's like not helping. So I've had some clients who like, they refuse to network with people. They refuse to do cases. and they're like, oh, but my portfolio, it's gonna be so good, and I have this awesome blog. And then like they never do the work to actually get a recruiter to see their portfolio, and then it means nothing. And so it is good in the sense that you are not neglecting the other important things that are available or required in order to get the offer.
Yeah, and Min was saying portfolios with case studies of product side projects. So sounds like we answered that question right on the money.
Yeah.
Uh, just wanted to confirm whether Meta accepts referrals for APM. If not, is networking is important. So, Lena, I'll answer right now. I tried so hard to network at Meta. Like this, for me, this is like the iron wall of companies. Like this time last year, I could not find a single person like kind of close to my network that worked at Meta, except like my friend who was a software engineer. But he's like, yeah, I don't really know any product managers, so that didn't help me at all. And they don't accept referrals for their RPM program. I did try, and I really tried networking. Um, Meta has. I'll be completely honest. It's actually like a really, really equitable process. Like I applied 2 to 4 hours after the application dropped. I did everything I said I did in this presentation. I had my resume. In my Meta resume, the one that I used to apply and get the offer is on Leland Plus. It might be on my LinkedIn too. You can go look. Uh, and like, I just didn't know. It's one of those things where I'm like, yeah, like I'm just going to shoot my shot. And because I applied early, I know the whole way through like and I even asked my recruiter these questions too, and I'm like, hey, like, so why'd you pick me? She's like, oh, well, you applied pretty early and your resume called out specific experiences that we were looking for, so you seemed like a great candidate to interview. And that to me was just confirmation I was doing all the right things all along. So in a very long-winded way to answer your question, no, they don't accept referrals for their RPM program. At least they did not last year. And if not, is networking important? It's always important, but I can't guarantee at a company like Meta, it's going to make a difference. You're just everything else that we talked about today. It's just going to be what's important. Apply early, be great, and nail the interviews.
Okay, next question. Where do you guys find mock interview questions like the ones you were talking about? And then there was a bunch of questions about resources. A lot I could say here. So unlike investment banking, unlike management consulting, where there's like a lot of data and numbers, like with consulting, you play this game of like, okay, here's my framework. I'm going to ask this question, really hope that you have some numbers. If you do, I know I'm on the right track. If not, I know I'm on the wrong track. That's not how product interviews go. You can just like make them up sometimes. I would do this all the time where someone say, I really want to work at Google. It's like, think through, okay, what is a Google product? I'm just going to ask a question about it. Like improve Android, improve YouTube, improve whatever, like Gmail, Drive, whatever. And so you can make them up. Leland Plus has a ton of content. I believe we've got like 100 hours of videos there. A lot of that is product specific, a ton of cases. That's growing every day. All of these events that we do get added to Leland Plus. So, I'll also say if you do the boot camp, you get access to Leland Plus as well. So you'll get access to it there. Okay.
I see one in regards to networking. As you guys are on the other side now, how would you like to be approached? So yeah, it's funny. Like now that I get some of these, I'm like, oh my gosh, like I'd never network with these people. I actually find like generally speaking, I accept every request somebody sends, just because I'm also trying to grow my network by all the same logic that I kind of told you guys. And as your network grows, your network will grow itself. If somebody were to reach out to me and ask for like they wanted to chat with me, I would really appreciate like a pretty like doesn't need to be overly formal, just polite, a polite, nice question saying, "Hey, how you doing?" Like with the basic amount of due diligence. Like if you just like looked at my profile and said, "Hey, I saw that you like to ski. I like to ski too," or like, "Oh, I saw that you ski. I think that's so cool." Like anything that shows that you did the minimum amount of research about me, I will almost always try to find time for that person just because I want to reward that behavior because that behavior is going to work for other people. And that's exactly how other people feel too. Like they don't want to get the copy paste. Hi, I'm Spencer. I'm looking for product management internships. Can you give me a referral in like the connection request message? I won't accept those anymore. But if they just like, if somebody's just like needs help and they're really nice about it, yeah, let's talk. That's how I would do it. And that was Ananya, by the way, who asked that question. We should probably be saying who's asking the questions.
Oh, yeah. Okay, maybe we do one more and then we wrap it up. And if you
Okay.
have more questions, you guys can meet with Spencer and ask him one-on-one. Uh,
Yes.
okay, let's go up. Um, I guess if anyone has final outstanding questions we haven't asked, you can drop them in the chat as well. Oh, someone asked.
I see one from Emily.
Yeah.
Sorry, I kind of just skimmed it. What unique advice or advantages would the boot camp have over doing prep on your own with the right resources? Can you point to any testimonials? Did we answer that, Mike?
Sorry, I'm not seeing this question. Where was it?
It was at 9:31. Emily W.
Okay. Okay, pulling it up now. What unique advantages would the bootcamp have over doing prep on your own with the right resources? So there's a few things. One, you don't know what you don't know. Uh, Here's what I have seen with resources. They want to be comprehensive, and because they do that, they overemphasize things. I remember thinking that like estimation questions were going to happen all the time. In all of my interviews, I had like 2 estimation questions. Uh, Analytical questions, I'd like heard a lot about it. I only ever got behavioral ones. I never had a case analytical like that. And so I think they steered me towards preparing for things that weren't really realistic. Also, things adapt all the time. When I was a sophomore, technical interviews were super common. And by the time I was a senior, they were super uncommon. Uh, and so the resources just get outdated really quickly. And so one, you can know that the boot camp will be as up to date as possible because all of these coaches are actively coaching a bunch of clients and getting real-time feedback on what is the market right now. Second is you get to work with other people, like it's a cohort. And so you'll be meeting other people who want to do mock interviews, who are interested in networking, who are going through the same thing. And then finally, the most important is like the personalized. To Spencer's analogy, like content can help you get from 0 to 70, and then practice can get you from 70 to 90, and then like personalized feedback can get you from 90 to 100. And so content is definitely helpful. Don't get me wrong. It's just not the end all be all.
Yeah, I agree with everything Mike just said, and I think that one of the most underrated aspects of the boot camp is the cohort, and it's really easy to go on Exponent and like when I was first looking for mock interview partners, I would go on Exponent and they had like a mock interview matching service, and that was really good to start at first. But then you just find people who are not as experienced, and they're like, or they're mailing it in, and some people can actually be really mean on these platforms. I think the beautiful thing about the cohort is that everybody's bought in. Everybody's not only financially committed, but emotionally committed. They want this. And I think that's awesome is because you'll find the right people that are going to be like, yeah, like let's hold each other accountable. Let's go home and do a mock interview with each other, even when it sucks. Like and sometimes like it would be so boring for me to go home and be like, oh my gosh, like I just want to go outside and touch grass. I don't want to do a mock interview right now. It's just like another product sense question or another behavioral interview. But it's just the work. Like you just got to do the grind. It's just boring. And in this cohort, you can go farther with other people who are like-minded like you that want to do it.
Yep. Okay, we're going to wrap up the meeting. Thank you, everyone. I really appreciate your time. If you have more questions, Spencer is very happy to answer them. Okay, see you, everyone.
Thank
Take
you, everybody.